Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Interlinked, the official Neo Tokyo podcast, hosted by the miraculous Nick and myself, and powered by Shrapnel. Just want to give a big shout out to our sponsors. Thank you very much.
Brace for impact, gamers, and prepare yourself for the sacrifice zone with Shrapnel. The world's first moddable AAA extraction-based shooter, built by a legendary, award-winning team behind some of your favorite games like Call of Duty and Halo. And they are kicking off 2024 with an absolute banger. People are finally going to be able to get their hands on Shrapnel during their early access season. And they are giving away $3 million worth of prizes. So buckle your chin straps and get ready to dive in and try and get your piece of the prize. Huge shout out to our sponsor, Playa3ull Games. They are inspired by gamers and funded by their community. They have a epic game on the Epic Games Store, a third-person shooter called Nexus. Hop on in there and check that out. They're also currently selling nodes, so if you're interested, check that out at their website, playable.games. That is a 3 instead of a B on Playable. Now strap in for the rest of this episode of Interlinked.
Also, a big shout out to the main man Crasher for the NT merch. Everybody go head over to the NT merch store as well. Today we have a special episode for you. We've been coming to you with episodes every single week since we launched. And basically you've been spending a lot of time with both of us. And so we thought it would be really cool to do interviews of each other on this episode so that you can know who we are, so that you have context and you know exactly who you're listening to every single week. And we can go on this journey together with no secrets, full transparency. So without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump in. Nick, my friend, welcome to the show. You're both a host and a guest today. So welcome, welcome. How are we doing?
Ben, I'm doing great. Super stoked for this episode to get to learn a little bit more about your background. Super stoked to be both a host and a guest. And we got a fun week of up numbers. So what a week to be talking about some crypto gaming.
Absolutely. Love it. I think we all saw BTC hit over 60K, touched 64K for a little bit and then came back down. But we're in the 60s, so everybody's happy. Everybody's happy, except for those who are sidelined. But single tier for you guys. Anyways, Nick, this next portion is all about you, my friend. So just want to dive in. Would love to hear your story.
Yeah, so a little bit on my background, how I got into like really this Web3 space of ours. So to zoom back a little bit, I've worn a bunch of different hats in my life, which are the experiences as I sort of draw on now. Um, if we go back to maybe 2020s, 2018, I had finished up a career, or really just a couple years at VMware. So went right from college at High Point in North Carolina, had joined the sales team there, which was really a absolute saving grace because I had not exactly focused on what I was going to do after college when I was in college. So it was April or something at the end of senior year. I'm like, I need a job. And we went to this big sale collegiate like kickoff. Our sales instructor was the absolute man. You're only supposed to bring like 2 competitors and like an alternate as a backup in case, one of the guys runs into some issue. Um, but our teacher was like, you know what? I'm going to bring 8 alternates because they're all going to think you're the number one alternate. And so I would only have to have competed if our bus had gotten hit by like an RPG and I was the only survivor. I would have had to compete, but got to go around and ended up interviewing for VMware. So started off my career there. That was really my first like big exposure to tech, and really gave me a nice base for eventually getting into Web3 because it was just another big, complicated product. And so sort of just taught me how to, dig through white papers, learn like, where this fit in the general technological space ecosystem, but did that for a couple of years. And by, 18 months in, I was just so fried. I wasn't getting any sort of like satisfaction, any sort of like love for what I was doing. So I was like, okay, it's time for a pivot. I was living down in Austin, Texas. I'm like, okay, I'm going to wrap up this job. I'm going to move to Boston and kind of figure out what I was doing next. Got super into the cannabis space. I was like, I've always wanted to grow it. And so I was like, I'm just going to start growing. Boston had recently legalized. And I was like, that'll be sort of my next start. Did that for a while, had a really fun year in Boston. And I was like, you know what? I'm looking for really a time to like figure out what I wanted to do next. And I was like, you know what? Maybe this is the right time for grad school. Applied to CU Boulder, went out there for my MBA, which was just, a wonderful combination of an excuse to move to a super fun place. And there's just some like pressure when you're talking to your buddies and stuff, and you're like, oh, I'm just taking this like gap year. I don't really know what to do. So an MBA was like a fantastic, like, okay, here's what I'm doing while I figure out what I want to do. Wrap that up and then move down to a little town called Parker. And that's when, COVID hit. Everybody's hanging out like sort of at their house. And that's where I really started to get involved in like sort of like the online gaming world. Had been a gamer since I was 6 years old, started with Pokemon Red version, hooked my whole life, but then started to do some streaming. I got into stand up. So I was doing, streaming during the day. My whole thing was I did it from a balance board. That was like, so I had like one camera aimed up top, one camera for the balance board. So you could do little like pop shove it sellies if I want a Warzone game or something. And not long after that, I had been involved in investing up into that point, mostly in real estate and equities, um, and started to hear about crypto. And Bitcoin had just done its big run before, it had that sort of like peak. I forget where it got, maybe into the 50s or low 60s, came back down, and there was like that sort of like gap period. And that's where I got involved and started super basic, was like, hey, I like the sort of like thesis on Bitcoin, heard Ethereum's like where you can get a bit extra juice. And believe it or not, I was like, the safest thing I could do is just buy Bitcoin every week and store it at one of these new crypto banks that was offering a yield. And those banks were BlockFi and Celsius. So built up a position there. Bitcoin then made its move to all-time highs. And then I pivoted to crypto gaming. Because I was like, okay, this is gaming, this is crypto, this is where my skills could actually be of value. Um, and just full tilt dove into crypto gaming from that point. Luckily, pulled all that money off of Celsius and BlockFi. And I always joke,
Wow.
I saved myself from losing that money at BlockFi or Celsius by losing it all on NFTs. Like a man should.
Battle
Got in
scars.
exactly. Got into Neo Tokyo, a little bit after that, um, and that really started, this whole journey into the space.
So absolutely love your character arc there of having fun, trying to figure out what you want to do, getting into technology, realizing it's not exactly what I want to do, but maybe kind of directionally correct, pivoting both geographically and professionally, and moving towards gaming, which is what you'd been doing since you were a little kid. Then kind of through that, wandering into the crypto space, and then uniting your two passions at the intersection of crypto and gaming. I think that's amazing. Once you did find Neo Tokyo and really going down the crypto gaming rabbit hole, like what were you doing? Were you researching projects? Were you investing? Were you farming? Were you just sticking with NFTs? Were you, what exactly were you doing like once you decided to get in?
Yeah, so had been following Becker up into that point, and then through Becker got introduced to Elliot as well. So was super glued onto their content. And I'm like, whoa, these guys are coming together and they're making a community in crypto gaming. I was already at that point, full sip in the Kool-Aid because I'd been watching their content. So I was like, all right, this is the place I need to be. Um, Went and did a little trip back to Boston, and it was right when it was like the pre-riddles, when everyone was trying to figure out, okay, how do I get into this little club that would eventually yield to being on the list to be able to get the NFTs? And I was a little distracted, I was visiting buddies and stuff. And so I saw one of Becker's posts, a particularly obvious post in retrospect, which was like, follow this link, click on the link, get to a door, and you've been blacklisted. Should have followed attention, like should have paid attention to what I was saying. You missed it. You will not be allowed to participate in any of the rest of the riddles. And like an idiot, I took that as face value. So I was like, well, guess I'm done. Guess I can't get it. I later learned, of course, from all the other people who that happened to, that was like, yeah, that was just a bluff. You could just continue and get into the riddles. So, flash forward to mint day and, wasn't on the list, wasn't able to mint, but I bought my S1 that day. So I started to see it rip up in price. And was able to snag my S1. And so really, just to like kind of finish that, I was super consumed by just the process from that point on. You had, obviously the follow on to get the vault, the follow on to get the item cache, and then the land. So that, just completely consumed me. But once, we were all in the Discord, the citizens had been minted. I really found my first place where I got to get involved in the space in any capacity greater than just, a general investor and community member on the research team. So Fair had, alongside a couple other citizens, set up the NT research team. I was like, okay, I'm doing this anyway. I'm spending all this time researching this games. I have a little bit of a background in technology, so should be able to wade my way through some white papers and, volunteered, was able to join the team. And so for those first few months, that's really where I was. I was reading the news, the NT news, shout out that team, and reading their newsletters each week, staying connected, and then just really digging down on the research side, which we were doing just totally pro bono. There was no sort of methodology of how you were going to get paid or any sort of like compensation. We were just producing research reports, voting on if these research reports were found worthy by the rest of the citadels, and then moving on to the next one. So that's really, where I got my start being involved in the general like Neo Tokyo ecosystem.
So I want to do a deep dive on that, but first, I think this is something that a lot of people are probably thinking about and kind of questioning, and probably not just, not just citizens, but like everybody, right? So I want to take a quick detour. When all the riddles were happening and people were first getting in, and like, we were getting like sold the dream basically. And for whatever, whatever it exactly was, I don't exactly know what it was, but there was something that happened that really took a lot of people by storm, from the perspective of it. It just felt like Neo Tokyo was that thing that we all were missing, but we didn't know that that's what we were missing until we came across it. And it was like it scratched an itch that you almost didn't know was there. Or you know what I mean? So like that to me was very like encapsulating, and it was very seductive. The dream was very, very like it taps something primal, right? Like you picture yourself in the world of Neo Tokyo, but you don't even know exactly how you got there, really. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So it really brings you in.
Couldn't agree more. There really was something that fully, sort of tickled that itch I didn't know I had. And for me, I think it was really a sense of community. So during that time, it's COVID. I'm isolated down in a little town called Parker. I'd bought a house down there and I was there solo and partially inspired by, sort of the Becker ethos that he was saying. He's like, listen, this is an opportunity that doesn't come often. Um, there was already sort of some legit barriers as well as, a real social pressure to like lay low. And so my community was the guys I would game with when I would go back and see my family. But then I was just in nightmare mode where I was not doing anything besides crypto, not doing anything besides crypto gaming. Like no one I knew in my immediate circle was in that space. Um, and so the idea of having a community where we were all focused on the same goal, a goal that was so intimidatingly large that no individual person could really have a full grasp on the space, even when there was only, at that point, there was probably only 15 or 20 games and only like one of them was playable. But still, even with a space like that, you were always trying to stay glued to the opportunities. So it really brought me into Neo Tokyo was the fact that I'm like, okay, this is my tribe. This is my crypto tribe. Um, and so that's what really got me like fully hooked, fully sort of invested, and where I was like, okay, I want to not only, you know, bring as much value as I possibly can, but also, bring as much value as I can to the community as a whole to make sure that this is, the gaming crypto Illuminati, the Soho House. Although I do hate that analogy because the Soho House is like kind of like a has-been spot in New York. Like the Soho House really holds the most clout with people that have never been there and don't live in the New York area. Because it's like, nothing really like special, but really the Illuminati, this sort of like crypto gaming club. So that's what really attracted me to it.
Yeah, I definitely think the ability to connect with like-minded people, but in a super gamified way, right? Like I'm not sure we always talk about, or at least I remember in 20 late 2021, early 2022, there's a lot of talk about like the Ready Player One, Snow Crash, Neil Stevenson-esque future and how this kind of fits perfectly into that. I'm not sure how many people actually read Snow Crash. I would really suggest taking the time to read that if any of the listeners have not. It's amazing. It's very prophetic, like it is he prophesized what was going to happen, and it's basically coming to fruition, including the multiple different networks.
Hmm.
He called that early on. But one of the main characters is funny enough called hero protagonist. That's the name of the character. That was his like screen name. But he was part of this special club of like elite players and people in this world, and only a select few could get in there. And it was the most coveted spot, basically in the whole. Anybody who's anybody wants to get in there and be in that special spot. And that always stuck with me because that was kind of like the promise of Neo Tokyo, right? Kind of like what's in my background here. Like that's where people talk. That's where you come and meet the best people, the who's who. So it's like, kind of scratching that itch of like the exclusivity and something really special. And I mean, the FOMO is real. Like when you're outside of the Citadel and you're looking in and like wondering like what is going on in there. I mean, I'm not going to tell you. You got to be a part of it to know. But I'd say it's worth it, and it's pretty incredible. But yeah, it's like the FOMO is just it's tangible. It's real. It's painful when you're not inside. So yeah, it's something special. But once you then got in and you were participating in the research division and actively participating there. What was that journey like from there? Because a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, you're now, the co-AMA lead and co-head of the, podcast and whatnot. Like you hold you're part of the leadership of, Tokyo. Like, how did you get there? What was that character arc from getting in and being a citizen to then working into and adding enough value to then become, a division lead of multiple divisions?"
Yeah, so it was really, I mean, the big takeaway for me was just a lesson that it's always worth it to shoot your shot and put yourself out there. Because, the research team was my main focus. I can't remember if the research team sort of fizzled out before or after sort of the big crash that we saw in crypto. Um, I want to say it was around that same time. So, we then go into the bear market. I'm still, all my buddies that did come into crypto from my personal network towards the end of that cycle left. They were so jaded. So, I went back to Neo Tokyo being just, my full community, being one of like the last people in my network, sort of like focusing on this crypto space. And it was just one of the meetings that I noticed Felix, it was announced that Felix was going to move from the AMA team, which, is always an active participant in, I guess not an active participant, but always a listener to the AMAs and always found a lot of value in them. And so I was like, okay, Felix is now on the dev team. I'm like, it's been a while since there's been an AMA. I felt comfortable putting myself out there from having so much experience hosting at both VMware. We would do lunch and learns. You would join these system matter expert teams. We were focused on storage. So you'd host these little lunch and learns where anyone from the company could come in and would get like sort of a deep dive into these specific topics. So I was like, you know what? That's kind of similar to what these AMAs are. I was doing stand up, so I was getting just more and more comfortable, putting yourself out there and being out in front of a crowd live. And so I pinged Firestorm and I was like, hey, like, judging from that meeting, it doesn't sound like there's really a lot of people in the AMA team. I would love to be able to help. He did a little bit of due diligence on, okay, hey, are you about to just hop up on one of these and make a fool of yourself? I convinced him that that was not going to be the case. He was like, okay, great. You're now part of the AMA team. Started hosting some AMAs. Right around the time that you joined the AMA team, then we were both hosting the AMAs. And then eventually, after we showed that we were taking the team that we were running, the relaunch with the proposal that you started, we started to work on that together, and then boom, Firestorm, brought us up and was like, "Hey, I'd really like to make you guys the co-leads," and that was really the beginning of the next chapter for the AMA team, and really for my career. And then, going from that, not long after, we started to talk about you had the idea for the podcast. I was all about that. As I had mentioned in the first episode, it had always been a dream to host a podcast. I'd always wanted to, but taking that first step of like, oh, I'm gonna actually do it, and so, yeah, really, that is how that all started. Which, the big takeaway that I had is like, always shoot your shot, always ask, because you really never know. I could never have guessed when I slid into Firestorm's DMs, which I had never interacted with Firestorm either. So it was a little bit of like a leap of faith. I was intimidated. And all that has come from that has been so amazing and so rewarding, hopefully for not just myself, but also NT in general. Obviously, we've been able to build, something quite special.
Well, it sounds like it sounds like it was one DM away from life from changing your life. So I just want to put that out there to the audience and everybody listening. Like, hey, maybe you could be one DM away from changing your life. So I think that's a magical takeaway. Just want to point that out. But yeah, dude, like you came in and you're absolutely crushing it, being an observer and then also a partner to you and working very closely with you now for a long time, definitely could say like you do a lot for Neo Tokyo, and just want to express my gratitude for everything that you've done so far and that you continue to do. And I know that there are a couple things like kind of low key that you're cooking up right now, so very excited for those to go for those to go full public. So we could talk about those too. But yeah, man, really excited. Really excited about your journey thus far, and yeah, just kind of curious of like to maybe cap off your story and then really complete the narrative here. Maybe paint a picture for us of kind of what does the future hold for you? Like what do you kind of see yourself doing and envision yourself doing? How are you playing crypto right now? Give us a little alpha there, and then yeah, paint a picture of what does the future hold for the magical Nick, magical crypto ethos?
Yeah, so there's a little bit brewing, which I can't reveal yet. The cupcakes aren't quite set, so to speak. So if I jostle them, they might collapse in on itself. But really working on something exciting there. And I think maybe by episode 22, 23, we'll be able to be diving into that. So a little bit of a teaser for the future. So I'll really focus on more the investment thesis, the investment piece. Um, so before getting into crypto, had been fortunate enough to have a couple successful real estate deals, which was my first real taste of taking a serious gamble. Which I'll always argue investing, no matter what it is always a gamble in one way or another. And then getting my head ripped off in crypto because I went made a good amount on the coins, made a good amount on Bitcoin, made a good amount on ETH, played the altcoin space a little bit, got into NFTs. That was successful in the beginning. Was lucky enough to sort of just get frustrated with the ETH gas, and being like, okay, I mean, we were doing, sometimes it was like $2,000 in gas to be able to be the first one to mint. And I'm like, okay, this is not sustainable. So pivoted to the Soul ecosystem, and that's where I got some of my first like big NFT wins. So Thugbird, for instance, I was like, oh my God, I bought this picture of a duck and now it's 17x in a week. But ended up rolling that all into like really crypto gaming. Then there was the big collapse. And that was such a pivotal moment in my career as like an investor on my own behalf. And really how I built up the capital. I always like to disclose this. I was fortunate enough that I was able to get wealth from my parents in the aspect that my dad was very successful in real estate. He, across the line, sidebarred me into deals. And that's how I was able to pay for school and then have money to sort of launch the initial real estate deals and then get into crypto as well. Always like to, it's something that I always feel needs to be disclosed. But really where my thesis is these days is, starting to learn about these massive drawdowns in equities, these massive crashes in real estate. I always like to talk about particularly the big crash in the 1980s when the banking system lost all of the profits it had made since the beginning of the banking system, some going back to the 1800s and early 1700s, in a single day. They lost
Wow.
over 100 years, 200 years worth of profits, just eviscerated. And that's the safe investment that most people recommend. And I'm like, if you can take a 50% drawdown in equities, is it worth clipping 7% every single year if around the corner you could take a 50% drawdown? Now, all the listeners are going to have to make decisions for themselves. I think I got this from Elliot. I'm not a financial advisor, and I'm surely not your financial advisor. So take everything I say with a grain of salt, just my own experience. But what I loved about crypto is in the initial bull market, I saw what the potential was. You can 10, 15, 20, 100x your money, even more so if you really, really get lucky on some of these early coins, or, you catch a meme wave early. And so I'm like, okay. And then I was reading some books around Austrian investment styles, what some of the big hedge funds were doing. And I was like, you could employ a really successful barbell strategy utilizing crypto. And so, I'd realized that this stuff can evaporate in a series of weeks. And when, it's very similar to real estate. When you're in a crash, you can't drop fast enough and you get into this floor cutting where you're just trying to move product. Sometimes it won't even move as you're dicing the floors and you're just watching value evaporate. So now it's like, okay, I want to take a number that I'd be comfortable losing. For me, it was like 15, maybe 20%. And putting that into crypto, then taking the rest. And, this high interest rate environment, you can make 5% on your cash between preferred deposit and treasuries. And, everyone has their own cash management strategy. But then I'm like, great. So essentially only 11% of my capital is at risk because that 85% is going to make slightly less than five on that whole. And I'm like, okay, even if everything goes to zero, that leaves me in a place where I can dust myself off and play again. And so now really I'm doing that to focus on just purely crypto with that 15%. Now, on the upside, you got to be careful because when we go and have a run like we just did, that 15% will balloon into a larger percent. So you got to kind of get those fish in the table, or those fish in the boat, so to speak. So really that's been my big sort of investment thesis that, hey, as long as this crypto game keeps going, and I think crypto gaming is going to be the biggest part of that crypto game, focus all of my attention where I can make the biggest difference. And for me, that big difference is on that 15%. So do my cash management. And then, if you let's say you hit a 10x in crypto gaming, Well, that just means you made 150% return on your entire net worth while only putting, 11, 12% at risk.
Yeah, that's a very, very astute strategy, I would say, especially for people who are like, hey, I have some cash and I want to get exposure to this, but I don't want to bet the farm on the whole freaking thing because anything could go to zero at any moment, and we know that for sure. So yeah, absolutely love that strategy and love that idea there. Um, yeah, look, I want to just kind of open back up the floor and hand over the mic and just ask, is there anything else that we didn't cover and touch about in your story that you think is important, that you think we should? Because I want to make sure that we, really fully capture the essence of the human being. I know you're an excellent skateboarder. I know you play a little pickleball on the side, and you like to travel and whatnot. But yeah, anything else that you want to kind of share here? Now would be the time.
Yeah. If I were to dilute sort of my 30 years of like my biggest takeaway is wake up every single day and wage a non-restricted warfare on fear. And so now I just try and focus all the time on like, okay, what are the things left that really, really scare me? And one of those was, hey, getting up in front of people and talking and putting yourself out there. And then I was like, boom, stand up, go and do 3 or 4 different stand up spots in Denver a night and really put yourself out there and fail and fail and fail and fail and get used to that feeling. Um, Putting yourself out there on the AMA team, putting yourself out there on waging into super technical new investments, just not accepting that fear, not accepting that that fear can hold you back. And that's where I've found like all of the most sort of rewarding moments in my life. And now the big fear, I'm a single guy. So like the last big fear is I'm like, okay, you got to start putting yourself out there and dating more and shoot your shot, especially the Becker. I think he had a post not too long ago. He's like, hey, as embarrassing as it is, I would practice the cold approach and I would go up to random women in the bar and look like an idiot and absolutely fall on your face. And that way, when opportunity presents itself, you've put yourself in a place where you feel confident succeeding. And that's going to be different for every single person. But figure out where your fears are, figuring out where they're holding you back, because you only got one life. So you might as well, nothing is going to be more rewarding than conquering your fear, jumping off of that, cliff into the water, going on the roller coaster you said you'd never go on, because that's where life starts. It's that old cliche. It starts at the edge of your comfort zone. And, to put a cap, on this interview, really just want to also say big, big thank you to you, both from podcasts, AMA, the ability to not get stuck behind all of these fears of what could happen when launching a business and just next, 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 drive forward, drive forward, drive forward. So big, big thank you to you, Ben. I've learned a ton from you and really, really excited on what we're building here.
Well, I deeply appreciate those kind words, and yeah, feel very grateful to be able to work with you because I definitely do like to push and drive things forward. But if there's not somebody with operational excellence to work with to be able to team up with, then you can push as much as you want, but you're just leaving a trail of devastation in your wake, and you're not actually building something with people over a long period of time, and then that for that to be able to compound. It really takes I think it really takes both sides of equal importance to be able to handle the chaos internally, which then allows to go out and like create within the world by externally the world is chaos. Internally, the organization needs to have structure in order to then that inflow of outside coming in, going out and like, finding a partnership or finding a deal or whatever, there has to be that mechanism of being able to like grab a little bit of the chaos externally and bring it internal and have that structure deal with it in a way that actually leads to something productive. So can't charge for it unless you have a good system to be able to like whatever you get, like bring it back and like have that system be able to handle it. So all to say, thank you to you and very grateful for you as well.
Oh, I appreciate it, brother. Now it's time for me to take off my guest hat, put on my interview hat. Let's find out all about Ben and dive into your background. I think is the right place to start. I know you've written books, you've had a podcast, you've launched companies, you were in the M&A space. We've got to touch on little bits of that throughout the podcast where they were relevant. But now let's figure out who is the man behind Interlinked, who is the man behind the host. So let's kick off and give us a little bit of your background, Ben.
For sure. Um, yeah, I think probably the best place to start is by saying that I'm the luckiest person in the world, right? I had the absolute best parents and the best grandparents anybody could ever ask for. Just, totally the best. So I already know that I hit the lottery and I absolutely won the lucky contest. I'm sure a lot of people probably think that about theirs, but I also think that about my family. So just so, so, so grateful for that. And everything else feels like it's just land. Yeah, just that I'm from New Orleans. That just means extra, the little cherry on top, right? Moving on from that, the really where it's relevant to Neo Tokyo is I started gaming when I was about 6. I played Diablo, started with Diablo 1, very quickly moved to Diablo 2. And the thing that just sticks out in my mind is I was in like first grade and the teacher had an assignment for us. And she was like, all right, everybody, what is your favorite hobby? And a sixth grader or a 6-year-old or 7-year-old um, wrote Diablo on their list of hobbies and then drew out the Diablo thing. And my teacher was like, I think we need to talk to your parents because this is a problem. And so I had a little talking to with the folks and anyways, so that kind of kicked it off. Played Diablo a lot. Really loved the strategy behind, hey, how do we put together the optimal build? What's the meta? Back at that point, it was typically a hammerton where you're teleporting around and you're throwing hammers in the sky and you switch to your concentration aura and there's nothing that they can do to stop you because you got hammers. Anyways, so clearly it's stuck in my mind. You know what I mean? Um, so so that was always fun. Also loved like strategy games like Medieval 2, Total War, and just like the grand campaign and like building out your army and then like investing in the different parts within the empire and like dealing with the population and they get like unhappy and so you have to build things for them and bring army and like resource allocation. All that was fascinating. Then moved into World of Warcraft and started off as the Horde and solidarity with my fellow horde members there. I started off as a hunter and it was always fun because I felt like getting to go on a grand adventure every single time you log in and play, and I love that because it was like there's obviously things in that game that you can do like magic, being a freaking minotaur thingy and having like a wild humongous golden tiger as a pet or whatever it is, like going on raids, fighting dragons. Like it just always captured my imagination. I always love that kind of stuff. Um, Always loved to like go on adventures and whatnot. So, anyways, gamed a ton. Played World of Warcraft for an ungodly amount of hours. Played League of Legends for an ungodly amount of hours. Played a whole bunch of video games. But also, I invested. I started investing when I was about 16. I had a little bit of money that I had saved from my bar mitzvah, and then all doing different other things around, and like birthdays, you get a little bit of cash here and there, and so it's just like stored everything and never spent anything. And then I convinced my dad to open me up a Fidelity account in his name. Totally was not of legal age to be able to do so. But he let me manage my own money. So I started investing in stocks. I started learning about compound interest, and it was really fascinating. So that kind of inspired me to want to be a financial advisor or a financial planner going into college. But I had this like little itch to also be a doctor. My uncle and godfather was a tremendous physician, totally rebuilding healthcare in the state of Texas, and he's always like my favorite uncle. I love all my uncles. If you're listening to this, I love you all. Yeah, just kidding. He's not my favorite uncle. Yes, he is. He's very and so wanted to be like him. So wanted to be a doctor. Did pre-med, like started college. And I will say I made straight A's that first year, but then I had an internship and I saw a little bit of blood There's like goo shooting it onto the floor during a surgery. And I was like, this is not going to happen. So I switched to finance because I figured if I'm still seeing blood and guts in finance, I'm probably doing something wrong. And so that kind of became the thing. So I started early sophomore year. And then kind of randomly, I got these two phone calls that would forever change my life. One of them was from my roommate at the time who had started a t-shirt company and asked if I'd help him sell t-shirts. The other one was from my dad, who was running his law firm at the time, and asked if I would help him with social media. And I told them both yes, but I told them both yes, I'd love to help, but don't hire me, hire my company. And so I started my first business December of 2014. And so I was about 20 years old. And so from there, I started to just learn more about marketing and social media. I went to LSU, Louisiana State University, for college, and so I ended up when I was going to talk to the head of the finance department for my CFP track, or whatever the financial advisor track is to manage money. Um, I left that meeting and had accidentally signed the entire finance department up as my first paying client for my agency. So it like kickstarted like some revenue, and then I started landing like other paid clients, and it was just awesome. Started like building a real business. I was like, wow, building some real cash flow here. This is cool. Um, did a bunch of totally, very much enjoyed my college experience. But there was always this tension, right? After I had started the agency about a year later, I published my first book. It was called CEO at 20, a little book for big dreams. And then right after that, I started my first podcast and just started interviewing entrepreneurs. And so I was running my agency. I was writing books. I didn't stop at that first book. I kept writing books. I probably had 6 or 7 out there. One of them hit Amazon bestseller list. And I started doing my podcast regularly. And at this point, I probably have 600 plus podcast episodes across a couple of different shows. I've interviewed billionaires, New York Times bestselling authors, Emmy Award winners, etc. And it was just this always this tension of like I had like my entrepreneur grind going on, and it was fun, and I loved it, and I knew that that was my path. And then I was trying to be a college kid at the same time, and so like a couple of years I lived in a fraternity house, and so the guys would like knock open my door with like a bong in one hand and a bottle of Jack in the other, and they'd be like, "Ugh," and I'd be like, get out of here. I want an interview with a CEO of a, Fortune 1000 company. What are you doing? So there's always that tension, right? But it's fun. And like, it's fun, like figuring that out and trying to walk that line. So I got into e-commerce, launched a couple of stores, learned about that, launched a music festival in New Orleans, which was a ton of fun. Um, I just want to tell that story for super quickly because I think it's a lot of fun. Um, so in the college experience, I know not everybody goes to college, but in a college experience, there is a phenomenon around finals where 2 weeks before finals, you're sitting there and you're studying and you don't want to do anything, nothing. You're focused, your grind time, no time for anything else. You're in it. But 2 weeks and one day before finals, you want to absolutely party your ass off to get it all out before you have to buckle down and grind. And so that 2 weeks in one day is exactly when we put the music festival and we called it Finals Fest, the last hurrah before you buckle down for finals. We did it in New Orleans. It was awesome. We had local artists. We had like selling their art and showing off their art. We had local musicians that came and performed. We had like this huge amphitheater in New Orleans. And then we, of course, had a little station set up with a television and a GameCube to play Super Smash Bros. For the nerds. Shout out to my nerd friends. So it was just cool. It's a really fun experience. Did that for a couple of years. It was a lot of fun. After all that, graduated, was kind of doing all these things. There was that tension not only from, doing having like the college kid life, but also trying to work as an entrepreneur. But also I was doing a lot of things within the entrepreneur track. And so it was just a little confusing, like doing way too many things all at the same time. And so from there, I just kind of decided, look, I'm going to go all in on the podcast. Um, I think it's going somewhere. And so, I started to like try to put together deals on behind the scenes. One of the deals, it didn't go through, but just kind of like just kind of showcase like, hey, this kind of stuff, like you could just get creative with things, right? Tried to put together a deal between two different interview guests. One of them was a manufacturer of a product. It was actually a CBD isolate was the product, and another one was a consultant who knew another group that was looking to buy it. So I was trying to arrange a transaction there. And so you may think like, oh, podcast, how do you make money there? But setting up a deal like that, that could have been a $215 million deal per year. And so, you can find ways to like make money when you help to put the pieces together and introduce people. And so that really just got my, that particular deal didn't pan out, but that just got the juices flowing and like showed me, hey, there's something here. So went all in on the pod, and I think it was end of 2017 around, maybe 2019 around that time, um, was a really defining moment because I went to go interview Grant Cardone in Miami in his headquarters. I flew there from New Orleans to go interview him. And I was interviewing him. And at the end of the interview, I said, "Hey, Grant, really appreciate the time, blah, blah, blah. Is there anything that I should be asking you that I wouldn't think to ask?" He said, "Yeah." Keep in mind, this is like a guy managing billions of dollars in assets and probably a billionaire himself by now. I don't know. But he said, "You should be asking me how you're fucking up right now." It's like, okay, I'm all ears. And I'm like, how am I fucking up right now? He's like, "Is this podcast your biggest passion?" At the time it was. And I answered truthfully, yes. He's like, "That's how you're fucking up." He's like, "There's a million podcasters out there, and strong change, you're never going to be the best. And even if you do, no podcasters make any money. So you need to go build a business and you need to sell a product. And I want you to hit $1 million a day. And then I want you to come back and then we'll talk." And I was like, okay, I'm on it. So I got absolutely roasted on my own show. That was being here. And it was awesome. It was a really defining moment because a lot of people were like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." Blah, blah. I'm like, no, 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 no. Dude was challenging me. He was challenging me to get better and to be better. You know what I mean? So at least that's how I'm taking it. I'm taking it as a challenge. And like I was really appreciative of that because it really snapped me out of the paradigm I was in. So immediately I remember hanging out with a buddy in Miami, in the ocean and just floating there and thinking about what he said. And I was like, okay, I'm in. I know what I need to do. So I had this philosophy, and I still have this life philosophy today of the seven core disciplines, of which there are seven. But I remember them in this order, with the acronym SIP FIRE, like taking a sip of fire. But spiritual, intellectual, physical, financial, industrial, relational, and emotional. Those are the seven core disciplines of life. Nothing in life exists outside of one or more of those seven core disciplines. If you can think of one, please tell me because I haven't been able to think about it. I've asked a lot of people and nobody can think of anything that exists outside of those. And so my philosophy was, if I can set up myself and my behaviors to where every day I'm able to take actions that allow me to compound favorably towards different goals or different results that I want to have at each of those seven core disciplines, over time, I will give myself the best chance of getting to where I want to go in life, right? So taking advantage of the power of compounding. You're getting really clear on like what actions do you need to take every day to move yourself towards where you want to go, so on and so forth. And so that was the thing. That was the idea. And I had a deep podcasting background. So I was like, okay, well, if I do a bunch of podcasts and pack them all together into a product, what does that look like? Virtual summit, kind of like an online conference. So I was like, great. The best business model ever, because you can say for a virtual summit, if you show up live, it's free. But if you want it on demand, you have to buy a ticket, and you do like $97 a ticket or $47 a ticket, whatever you want to charge. And so you just have this constant flywheel of like creating content, helps with SEO, brings people in. You're working with a lot of other people. Everybody can sell tickets. You give them their own referral link. So they want to help sell tickets because they're promoting themselves and they're part of the thing. And then it's an easy, easy offer. It's a free and a paid offer. It's very clear to see the value add because it's kind of hard to charge for a podcast. But for this, it makes a lot of sense. So got started, started making money, started selling tickets, started to build a real business. That was my first, I call it, real startup, right? It was called Life Mastery Foundation. Um, that started kicking off end of 2019. I went all in. I stopped everything else I was doing and I went all in on this. I had a partner out of Canada and we started scaling up. We started making money. We started scaling up. And so then I I got obsessed and I started to build out this system of being able to scale this with other people because we could only launch so many summits ourselves. But I thought, I have this, I know how to launch a summit. I know how to get the guests in, I know the speakers in, and I know how to, broadcast that out to the world. If I can build a system to empower other people to be able to do that within my framework and within my business, then I can just add more people in and we could scale up. So I built a system out, scaled within about 4 to 5 months to 120 people that worked for the business. And the whole system was beautiful. Like it got people in that were, on the recruiting side, like people were interested in applying, got them in, got them a meeting on my calendar. I was from every day from like 8:30 a.m. to like 8:30, 9 o'clock p.m. Every 20 minutes, I had another interview. And I was just cranking these interviews out every single day, many, 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 many hours a day for a long time, for months. Probably did 2,000 interviews in those 4 months, and out of those, whittled it down to like 120 people. Anyways, but once I had interviewed them, I could just move over their contact within a pipeline that I had built using ActiveCampaign, and then it triggered the rest of the automation to where it sent out their contract. It reminded them to sign the contract. Once they had signed it, it filed that in our system. It sent them their invitation to all the different accounts and stuff and got them in the Slack channel and introduced them to what to do next. And then there was a training period of like, these are the things you're going to need to do. And from there, it then put them on a 90-day cycle of management. I had my email system managing all of the people in there. And every 90 days, it would launch a summit. And it had all of the different mechanisms that they needed set up and automated to where they could just do the things and they followed the routine every day. They would get an email every day. This is what you need to do today. This is your total timeline for doing it. Good luck. And then some tips and some trainings and some other stuff. And then after the summit was launched at day 90, it then said, hey, do you want to have a day off or do you want to get ready for your next summit? And every day it would send them that thing. So they could opt in to when they were ready to launch their next thing. And everybody was on it. And so it was just a system. And so we were crushing. So we really started to scale fast. I think we got to like 50,000 customers within like the 4 or 5 months as we were scaling our employees as well. But then COVID hit and people got scared of buying tickets. I thought we're doing virtual summits and now we're fully virtual. We're about to be a unicorn. But it turns out people stopped wanting to buy. So the revenue stopped. We had some other issues as well. And then at the same time, my grandfather had stage 4 skin cancer, and I was one of his main caretakers. So I was just being pulled apart, from both sides. So it was pretty brutal. Unfortunately, I lost that battle on both fronts. And then I was like, okay, I need a break. I'm gonna go work with other. I'm gonna go work with some other entrepreneurs, and everything I've just learned, I'm gonna help, bring to them to help them scale. So I started working with other companies. Went to work with a software company, was an Inc. 5000 fast growing company in America, helped scale to 140,000 plus customers. Then went back into the agency world, worked with a company that was a very, very high elite marketing agency. They had a competitive advantage where they're the only ones that could within Facebook's ecosystem that was considered part of their Facebook protection program, where for CBD ads. So they were the only ones that could run CBD ads in the entire industry that was like safeguarded by Facebook so they wouldn't get taken down. It was a huge competitive advantage, and we scaled to a total monopoly in the space. At one point, we were running between 85 to 90% of all the CBD ads on the Facebook and Instagram platforms. It was crazy, crazy, really, really great guys. From there, I then went into mergers and acquisitions, buying and selling marketing agencies, and then holding the ones that were perfectly positioned to absolutely crush it when the metaverse hit full scale. And so this time frame now brings us to early-ish 2022 was when I started doing all the mergers and acquisitions. I had learned about crypto middle of 2021. Somebody tried to get me in on a random shit coin on Binance. And I was like, oh wow, this is ridiculous, right? Like I tried to help an e-commerce company launch, and it was supposed to be like coffee company but also launching his shitcoin. And so I just went from not knowing anything about crypto to being introduced to the very depths of just the most degenerate shit of all time. Like people were freaking, they were launching like randomly launching coins to random Telegram groups. Devs were putting in contracts where you would think that it was like a rebase token and there was like a tax on buying and selling, and that tax would go to token holders. But the entire tax went into the dev wallet. And as quickly as they could, they were going to rug your ass and get out of there. And it was just known that that was just part of the game, so complete degeneracy. I was like, this is crazy. But I got introduced to crypto that way. Um, and so from there, I was like, I need to take a little break from crypto. I don't want to, this is not what I want to do. But then I discovered these crypto trading bots. And from 2020, early 2021, I had this really pivotal moment in my life, unfortunately, where my dad had a heart attack and died. Person I was closest to in the world. And so I just had this time where I was like, man, I don't really want to do anything. And so I spent all my time gaming, just gaming my ass off. Actually started to get pretty good and started to try to go pro, and started joining it. Like I joined a team. We started winning our leagues, and we won the championship of the league we were in, and like moving up the amateur scene. And anyways, I gamed so hard that actually hurt my wrists, and the doctor said, "Hey, if you continue, you're going to permanently damage your wrists." So I had to stop. So yeah, kind of kept going. These things were kind of happening simultaneously, but Neo Tokyo happened. Absolutely went down the rabbit hole when I discovered these crypto trading bots, kind of later 2021. Um, and then I immediately started trading 100 different coins. Had no idea what I was trading. Started making money because we were in the most epic bull run to date. Back then, exactly. And so like I was like, okay, this is real. Let me dig in. And so every single coin on Gemini, Binance US, Kraken, and Coinbase and FTX, every single one I looked into. I looked into every. It was just like the most epic deep dive of all time, and I read through all their websites, all their white papers, all their socials, everything they're doing, and I just did like a crash course on what is crypto and what are these freaking tokens. And so that's when I discovered the gaming tokens and the intersection of crypto and gaming, and that's when I like rediscovered Alex Becker's YouTube channel, because I had seen some of them before in the marketing stuff, but it was like, oh wow, this person is talking about this, and like this makes so much sense. And so it all just kind of hit all at the same time. Neo Tokyo happened. I absolutely got wrecked by the riddles, could not figure that out. And then bought in early 2022 from the M&A gains. And from there, just kind of off to the races. The rest is kind of history.
Oh, I love it. I mean, what an absolutely amazing journey. Just a quick couple questions that jumped into my head. First off, what were you playing when you were shooting to go pro?
League of Legends. I was
League
a
of
jungler.
Legends.
Yeah.
Let's go.
hmm
Uh, and then where was Neo Tokyo at that stage where you joined? Was it like that you bought a full S1 or you had to buy the pieces, had the S2 mint happen? Where was it quite in the NT timeline?
Yeah. So S2s were a thing already. I think they were a thing. I only cared about S1s though. And it was at like a very, very low point. The prices were very, very low. And so I sat there and I figured out the game of like, okay, reward rate is really the most valuable thing, but you have all these different other, these other different things that are also critical, but probably more for like those who want to play the game and those who actually care about this, like I'm starting to. And so I sat there and I did the math, and like I would build spreadsheets and I figured it out of like, okay, I'm on the hunt for highest reward rate, lowest, like highest reward rate per ETH ratio that I could find. And found like a or 6 or 7 reward rate for like 13 ETH at the time. And I was like, boom, I'm in, I'm done. And so then I got that. And then I kept researching it and I was like, this is so fun. And so then I was like, okay, well, maybe if I just like trade for this and add a little bit of ETH, then I can like kind of barter my way up. Um, and ended up building the citizen that I have now. And I'm never getting rid of that citizen ever. I'm gonna stick with that citizen for all time. But yeah, big shout out to Race for the Win, an absolute goat. Really helped me figure a lot of that stuff out, and like traded with me and did a lot of things, and just a really high class individual. Really appreciate him for helping me like build the citizen that I have today. But yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. It's like I love to play the game and figure it out, and it was fun trying to get all that stuff optimized.
Oh yeah, huge shout out to Race. I bought a good chunk of my stable from him as well. Totally, totally agree. I mean, before we even knew each other, we were playing the same game, which was, building out those spreadsheets. And what was also so fun, it was a moving target because white paper would come out and be like, this is what we're going to do with bytes. And here's how the reward system's going to work. And I'm like, okay, sweet, I'll optimize for that. And then it would be like, yeah, actually, that part didn't really make sense. So we just pivoted to that. And then I'm like, oh, wait, crap. And then I'm exposed here. So yeah, I mean, the Bites game was the game of my life. So definitely relate there. Curious. So once you get into NT, how'd you start to get exposed, like not exposed to the community, but how did you start to interact with the community? Where did you start to get involved once you joined, besides, on the Bites asset side? If you could give us a little bit of your journey there.
100%. And I just want to say, by the way, I when I first got in, I had focused so hard on the citizen and the reward rate. I actually didn't even know that there was any sort of bytes yield. Bytes were just this thing that was like way over there that I didn't understand yet. Only when I bought it, thinking like I have to get in. I can't miss my shot at being a part of crypto gaming, in the future of this industry. Only when I got the citizen did I then went on bytes to bytes. You know, thank you to Neotoad. Shout out to you for all that you do, and saw like, oh my God, this is yielding like this is a productive asset. This is yielding bytes, and bytes are a real currency. This is crazy. What's going on here? So that was a huge like just bonus. I didn't even factor that in my in my calculations, but I was like, wow, this is awesome. It's the lanyard. But once I got in, really just jumped in, and I found this group that was like they had like 30,000 customers, and they were interested in potentially partnering with Neo Tokyo. So immediately I jump in and I'm like, hey, I have this opportunity for Neo Tokyo. I'm like, I want to just add so much value. And immediately tagged like Alex or Elliot or something. It's one of the mods had to be like, hey bro, like, chill out a little bit. You just, maybe don't tag them immediately. And I was like, okay, well, who do I take it to? So, then I started like figuring out who I can do business with, who I can work with, how I can add value and try to lead with value and bring. I'm a whale hunter in business. I really want to go after the big deals that really push the needle. So that's what I was trying to do for Neo Tokyo too. And I was like, okay, we can all win together. From there, then just kind of I was in it. I was trying to help out a little bit, like with some sit cap stuff. Trying to help out a little bit with some AMA stuff, and just kind of volunteered. I saw people were doing AMAs. I was like, hey, I've done podcast stuff in the past. Um, I'd love to help. Love to help however I can. And so got up and did a couple of AMAs. Then like got really deep into the M&A stuff, and I was like, I have to reposition my branding because I'm so public online with this AMA stuff. Like I was basically the front end of the deal team, bringing in opportunities there, and like basically like every company that we were going to buy, that I talk to them. So they're going to look me up the minute that they talk to me or before they talk to me. So I had to like rebuild my online persona. So I had to like change my stuff in order to be less like cartoon character PFP online and more like, actual professional adult. And so that kind of like took me away from the space for a little bit. And then um I think the like endish of 2022, around that time is when I was like, okay, I'm back. I'm out, I'm out of that thing. There was, I was ready to move on. Because I was like, I have to be in Web3. I got to be full time. And so yeah, really I'd say beginning of 2023. It's like, okay, I'm back in it 100%. I had, by the way, in 2021, when I understood the opportunity of crypto gaming, I immediately started the Crypto Gaming Institute, and which was a podcast. And I did probably 100 interviews with some of the top Web3 folks in the space. So I was like, hey, just want to like, and I was just having fun, got pulled away with the M&A stuff, came back, was like, do I want to refire back up the Crypto Gaming Institute? Kind of had other podcast stuff. So I kind of put all the podcast stuff together in BGTV. It's like, okay, this is a separate thing. I'll do some crypto, some whatever, but no restrictions there. But let me just build something within Neo Tokyo to like, build with the homies, with the other citizens. And so then I went on this mission to meet every single citizen. And I'm very grateful for everybody that hopped on a call with me, but basically hopped on a call with every single citizen that I could find. I know some people don't like to get on calls, and so we did a little texting, but most of the people were cool about getting on the call. So I just tried to meet everybody. There are probably 2,000 people that I found to DM, and I probably got on 300 to 400 calls with citizens and just met people and figured out what they were doing, tried to see how I could add value. From there, then got tapped to kind of rejoin the AMA team and really, just started working with you, which was a ton of fun. And then we really operationalized that division. We turned that into a real business. Started working with some really incredible sponsors. Started, building out a team, working with the creative division, working with some an attorney from Neo Tokyo, with working with some administrative badasses from Neo Tokyo, and everybody's a citizen that we're working with, and we built a really high functioning, really fun operation there. Then just kind of had a few other things that I was kind of working on within Neo Tokyo and thinking about, and then pretty recently started firing up something that's pretty special. Not exactly correlated with the thing that you're kind of firing up that we were talking about, but kind of like friends side by side here, because we'll always work together. But yeah, just kind of anyways, the answer was came in and tried to add value first and had a core skill of like interviewing and podcasting and media that I could share and add value and show, I ended up showing that I was competent enough to be able to be trusted with some responsibility. Eventually got voted into the community council, which thank you for everybody who voted. I very much appreciate that. And then I love to plant seeds of like, hey, I noticed this problem. Let's go solve it. Here's how I would solve it. Here are the people I think would be amazing to solve that. Let me help like put together the people, put together the idea, help write the proposal, and like let's ship it and let's just move forward. And just basically like time and time and time and time and time and time and time again, I have seen those who can move the fastest are going to win. And a lot of people just cannot move quickly and they will not move on things. And so something that will normally take somebody a month, if you can get that done in a day, you're going to have a massive competitive advantage. And it's not the end of the world. Nothing is ever the end of the world. Like no matter what happens in business, 99.7% of the time, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. Like it may suck for you because you may lose money or you may be inconvenienced, but nobody's going to die. Like you're going to be okay. And so you can just speed up your level of decision making and you can execute much, 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 much faster than anybody else and just relentlessly like push, 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 and do so with integrity and treat people right and don't try to fuck anybody over because that will come back to get you because you're going to fuck with the wrong people. You're not even going to realize it and it will end up being your downfall. Or you fuck with enough people that they're like, we hate this person and we're all going to band together to stop them, so like I always am like, hey, I want to make my partners as much money as humanly possible so that everybody loves to work with me so that they'll continue to work with me because I love like the people that I want to partner with are the people that I love working with and I want to work with them forever. So when you have like this mutual like give of like, hey, I'm trying to add value to you, I'm trying to make you money. The other person's like, hey, I'm trying to add value to you in a different way that complements each of our strengths and I want you to make money. It's a great partnership and everybody can just, continue working together and then just keep rinsing and repeating. And whatever you see, go after it and tackle it with wild abandon. And don't worry about messing up because you will. And it's not the end of the world. It's not that big of a deal. And eventually you'll figure it out. So that's how.
Yeah, I love just the connection between, when you were in your career and you were like, I'm gonna have so many interviews and just go full tilt, and how you ended up coming onto the scene really in Neo Tokyo with, hey, I want to meet all of you guys and just put some time on my Calendly. That's how I think was our first introduction. And I was like, okay, like this guy's doing something cool. He's trying to meet everybody inside of Neo Tokyo. I hadn't met you before. Put some time on your calendar. That's how we got introduced. One other thing that, we went over a little bit was just that formation of the AMA team, but I think is such an important place to dwell because you really introduced me to this model of scaling where tie people who you need to set this up. So, we can use shout out Jared Hogshead. He was the first guy who came on and joined us on the AMA team. And we use future sponsorship revenue and offering that off in allocations in order to bring on people, which allowed us to build this entire business without having to come out of pocket. Because when you start and you're doing sponsorship contracts and forming the LLC and doing the operating agreement, all of that takes money. But if you can find people that value the vision and then tie them to the vision. So just wanted to highlight that because that's something I learned from you and is such a powerful tool that I know I will use for the rest of my entrepreneurial career. What a powerful story, what a powerful lesson. Now here we are sitting in 2024, even though that sounds like the future. I was just talking to someone, they're like, "Oh, I'm getting married in 2025." I'm like, that sounds weird. But where are you now? Where are you looking forward to the future? What are the big next steps for you, Ben, both in the cryptocurrency industry, and feel free to take it wherever you want.
For sure. Yeah, and just a note on the rev share idea. The reason why that works is because it ties everybody to the right incentive of generating revenue. And then you have to value that appropriately of like what are they providing to the team, and you take your best shot, then you try and you figure it out, and you mess up and you try to fix it and figure it out, right? um, as that grows and scales, that becomes an unbelievably lucrative deal for everybody else. So in the beginning, it's a great deal for you as the founder. And then over time, it becomes a great deal for everybody else because as the business grows, the revenues become enormous and they get a huge piece of that pie. So just kind of recognize what you're signing up for. For something that is like a division within Neo Tokyo, in my opinion, it's worth it to be like super generous with everybody because we're all really in it together, and everybody is in the beginning basically volunteering their time to take a shot and try to add value to the Citadel and the other citizens. And so I was like, hey, we should be really generous with everybody so that everybody's going to be excited about it so we can really push this forward and demonstrate what building a division with zero upfront capital could really look like and turn it profitable really, really quickly. And so just know, like, if you're trying to start a Web2 business or something IRL, like, maybe be careful with that and maybe say, like, hey, in the beginning, until we actually hit a certain amount of revenue, we're going to do this rev share. And then at that revenue, we're going to reevaluate and we're going to move to salary with some potential milestones for earning into the equity of the business. Just kind of keep that in mind of like that could backfire on you if you don't think through the implications of if you do scale later on. In crypto, things are typically a bit more generous, especially early on in the business, so that it could probably work there, but just have that in mind. Moving forward from 2024 on, I teamed up with Hustlepedia and his married crew of incredible people. Shout out to you guys, to help build out Nexus. Became a co-founder of Nexus, building an amazing software company, basically a research tool for the retail crypto gaming investor, very much needed in the space. And it's been a lot of fun working over there. Learned a lot working there about like how software companies are built, and really how to just try to add value as being somebody that's not a developer and like non-technical, but still being able to help out in a in a meaningful way, help to grow. There's a lot of value to, I believe, interpersonal skills and being able to negotiate and close deals. First of all, find the people to make deals with, build rapport and trust, pitch an idea of like, hey, here's how I think we could work together. And then on the back end, actually execute that idea and see it through. You don't need to be technical, but you do need to have the interpersonal skills and be able to build relationships enough to get that over the goal line. Um, Also, kind of helping to build out a new division within Neo Tokyo that's going to be, first of all, extremely profitable for Neo Tokyo, but also is going to help solve one of the big three problems that I see almost every project face. They face three problems. Either they need marketing, they need funding, or they need some sort of help with like recruiting and talent. So, we have I'm going to let that rest for right now. But those are basically the three issues. And so I'm always on a mission to like help solve issues and help solve problems. And so those are three things that I've been very excited about, trying to work with other citizens to really help tackle. Um, a couple things going on with Neo Tokyo under the hood. Also, crypto has been ripping, and I've been fully allocated since like October 1st of 2023. I don't know if it was luck or an accident or if I'd spent so much time that I was just like, okay, these are good valuations or whatever it is, probably mostly luck, but just happened to kind of get in close to the lows. So I've been very excited about that. And just very grateful for that. And yeah, looking to start DCAing out once we get to post Bitcoin ATH and just start to trickle out as it makes sense. And don't want to make any rash moves. I think a lot of people are probably going to sell. Um, I think most people are going to sell too early or too late. They're going to say, oh man, we got burned last time and we got our heads ripped off. And so we don't want that to happen again. So we want to lock in gains. They'll probably lock in like from here, like maybe 2 to 3X's, and they might miss out on the next 5 to 10 after that. But then most people are going to go the other way and they're going to stay too long and they're going to see their portfolios 50X. And then they're going to be like, oh my God, this is the most money I've ever made in my life. And they're going to give it all back and they're going to ride it back down. So I'm definitely on a mission to not have that happen. So I'm going to start trickling out. And as things get more and more ludicrous, increase the flow of the trickle out. And then at some point, just, take it off and call it a day and be happy with that and be grateful for that. Um, but yeah, just working, building, really, really trying to focus on like planting seeds and helping to put people together and architect the idea and then move on and then find synergies between those different groups of people. Have a couple of Web 2 things cooking that kind of randomly popped up. That was like, these things are annoying to me and I want to solve them. Hey, person over there that I really like, do you want to help me solve that? And they're like, yeah. And so those are kind of some side quests that are coming that probably take between 5 to 10% of my mindset, but really just like 90% focused on crypto gaming. And just at this point, there's so much momentum that we all are feeling. The goal for me is just don't fuck it up. That's it. Stay the course. Don't fuck it up. We're here. It's the right point in time. We've all been positioned for crypto gaming since Neo Tokyo started in end of 2021. We've seen it. We've had an entire bear to get our incomes up, get our portfolio set, get our positions in place. And now we are starting to reap the fruits of our labor. So just don't fuck it up. We're here. This is like we have reached the promised land and you just got to see it out. Close the deal. We're on the 10-yard line. It's time to score that touchdown.
Oh, I love it. The thought about not leaving too early, but making sure you get out, if it's an analogy that we're at a bar, you want to get out before the lights come on. Because then you realize that all that you saw might, all the gold might not actually be gold. Um, would love to know just how you're thinking about because what you're talking about is really what separates. I think Becker pointed this out. 90% of people lose money in crypto. They either, most will get out too late. So what are you looking at to indicate when things might be too frothy?
100%. Yeah, I think the one thing we can take from Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, is everything should be based on valuations. And so my thought is just taking a guess, like, hey, what does this company do? Why does it make sense for token to go up? Is it based on speculation? Okay, fine. There's a certain amount that can send it, right? Just taking a guess. Most of it's probably going to be around um, the Bitcoin ATH. And like once we get past that, nobody knows what's going to happen, right? So I think like at like maybe 10-20% after Bitcoin ETH, once the rest of them start to really pop after that, and they may pop on the same day. Like we always like to talk about, money goes into Bitcoin and then 2 weeks later into ETH and then 2 weeks later into alts. But if you look at the charts, it's kind of all happening at the same time now. So it's like, just be careful trying to follow old trends like that. But once things go into uncharted territory, just trickling out of maybe like, 0.5% of the portfolio when things have a really green day. And when they go up a bunch, take a little bit of profits. If you put 500K into something and it doubles in a week, maybe take some profits off the table. Like you'll be okay if you don't catch the next 5X on that because you caught the first 2X and that's huge. That's not real life. That's crypto, like crypto craziness. You know what I mean? real life, a 2x in a week is it's like unthinkable. It's usually 2x in 5 years. So trying to like anchor myself into TradFi world where I spend a lot of time and just being like, okay, am I out competing Warren Buffett with this trade? He's roughly between 20 to 30% compounded annually, which is a huge difference, but there are different numbers, but let's call it 30%. If he's compounding 30% per year for 30 years, 50 years, whatever his record was, um, is this trade on par with that or better? Okay, then I can take some chips off the table because he's one of the best investors on planet Earth in the history of humanity. So if your gains are looking better than his, can you really be upset if you miss out on a little bit up if you've locked those in? So just trying to like anchor in reality of like, hey, most of the world's not here. They're not experiencing this thing. So having that 50% and the other 50% of like, what do I think this is actually going to go to? Taking a guess and just trying, like you're never going to die from taking profits. You're also not going to die from letting it run a little bit more. You may make or lose more or less money, but you're not going to die. So, like, give it your best shot. Try your best. And don't blindly follow what other people are saying because everybody has an incentive and you don't know what that incentive is most of the time. And even if you know what one of the incentives are, you don't know what all of the incentives are. So just be really, really careful with that. Um, because what is unsaid is oftentimes much more important to what people are going to do than what is said.
No, some absolutely great nuggets of wisdom there, particularly the incentives. That's something I was totally blind to in the first cycle, that really building in the space opens you up to, hey, there are influences that lurk below the water where you don't know who's paying who's got sweet deals, who's got a revenue tie.
And you'll
Um,
never know. You'll never know. You can only speculate, and it doesn't matter.
yeah, it's like a
Just know
poker
that
game.
it's there. Yeah,
It's a poker game. You don't know if that guy's playing 3D chess or if he's just drunk off his ass, just doing silly stuff. No, so
100%.
a great
And
share.
one last thing, because now you got me fired up. The game is totally rigged against you. Like you are retail. You are retail. You're the ones that all the media likes to say retail's not here yet. You are retail and you are here. So when you have gains, like it doesn't count until it hits the bank account. You know what I mean? So just be careful. And remember, you can always buy back later. You can always get back in and you may miss some of the upward movement, but it's okay because you don't want to get wrecked. Like it's much better to miss out on 10x than to experience a negative 90%. So just be okay, like focus on preventing the downside and the winning will take care of itself.
Totally agree. That lines up well with my thesis on the matter. Hey, I know we're running short on time. Is there anything left that you're thinking about that you want to wrap with? Anything else you want to tell the audience? Is there anything
Yes.
that I haven't thought about that I haven't gotten a chance to ask you to parrot your question back at you?
Yes, Nick. Is this podcast your greatest passion? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, it's I think it's worth saying your life can change much faster than you think it can in either direction. I can guarantee you that. In 1 or 2 months of really try harding something, and I'm not talking about spending time doing something. I'm talking about spending time ruthlessly executing and pursuing the next thing and doing very high value tasks to set yourself up to actually move the needle. Like, what are the money making activities that you can spam all day, every day for the next 2 months? Because if you do, you can change your life. Anybody out there can get basically any sales job they want at any time. There are literally in the affiliate marketing world, like almost everybody pays a referral fee for anything. If you like something and you think you know somebody else that could use it, go get a referral link. Most of them are self-service online, or just DM somebody and be like, hey, can I get a referral link, or can I set up a referral deal with you? And then go sell that every second of every day in the most palatable way that you can. Like just go ask people if you can talk to them. And a lot of them will say yes. And they'll be like, why do you want to talk? And you're like, because I want to help, I want to help solve issues and better the space. I want to bring the whole space forward. And I'm just trying to figure some stuff out and was hoping we could brainstorm and chat. Okay, that's a valid reason to want to talk. People will say yes, but people will say no, some people will say yes. Regardless of what that looks like, focus on the most important money making activity for like every second of every day for the next 2 months. Your life can change. Don't get into this weirdness of things have to be perfect. Just give it your best shot and execute as quickly as can. Like try to make as many decisions as you can as quickly as possible, and you'll get into the habit of making decisions quickly, which can give you a huge competitive advantage. And don't ever forget that your life can go from completely sucking ass to way better than you ever thought it could be in 2 to 3 months if you sit there and you actually grind in an effective way. Most people waste their time. They're like dilly-dallying here, or they're like reading an article here, thinking their life's going to change. Look, I'm all for reading. I love reading, but reading is not a direct money-making activity. That's like I want you to focus on direct money making activities. Go sell something, go apply for a new position, do whatever it is, the thing, like talking about a battle against fear. Most of the time, it's like, oh, I'm afraid of looking dumb. I'm afraid they'll say no. Who gives a shit? If they say no, you're right back where you started. If they say yes, that could change your life. It's an asymmetric bet with no risk. Oh, you're going to look silly in the DM. You're going to ask somebody to get on a call with you, and they'll screenshot you and post it on Twitter and laugh at you, and you'll go viral of getting laughed at by everybody. Okay. And it fucking happens. Just go for it, because you won't get to the other side of where you want to go unless you run that risk. And that risk is worth getting to the point you've always wanted to get. So don't be afraid. I promise it'll be fine. This is not Sophie's choice. It is not a life or death situation. It's just the thing that's holding you back is wasting time and not finding that one important money making activity and spamming that ruthlessly, spending all day, every day, only accomplishing that one thing. That's the only thing that's stopping you from changing your life in 2 to 3 months. Guaranteed.
Oh, I love it. I mean, shoot your shot. It's convexity. It's a call option for your life. You're spending a little bit
Yes.
of social premium for a chance of a huge, huge upside. And when I'm investing in both life and business, you want call options. You want stuff that it's a little bit of premium that could blow up, into a huge, huge gain for your life. So I think that's
100%. In fact, I'm sorry to cut you off, but in fact, if somebody's actually going to go out and execute on that, I'll make you a bet. Either you will change your life in a meaningful way after 2 to 3 months of hard work, real hard work, documented evidence of hard work. Show me a screenshot of that and a screenshot of you not changing your life, and I will literally pay you $100. You know what? I'll pay you $1,000
I
in
love it.
bites. But I need real evidence of you trying for 2 to 3 months, 3 months of hard trying all day, every day. I don't care about your excuses. I don't care about anything besides evidence, documented evidence of hustling and grinding. And if your life has not changed meaningfully in 3 months, I'll give you $1,000. Open bet to anybody.
Boom. You heard it here first on the Interlinked podcast. I absolutely love it. Ben, what a special episode for our 19th episode. Absolute pleasure getting to know you better through this interview. Super, super grateful for all that you do. Big thank you to the audience for sticking with us and learning a little bit more about your host. We're going to be back next week for our 20th episode of Interlinked. It has absolutely flown, been an absolute pleasure. So we will see you all next week on the official Neo Tokyo podcast, Interlinked.